to see everybody. Psalm 118:24. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And you will hear that again. So we thought that maybe God needed us to hear it more than once today. It's a beautiful day at Alcovy United Methodist Church, and we're thankful that all of you are here to worship with us. And I saw some really good food back there. So concentrate on what you're doing right here, but know where you're going. Donna, what do we have going on today?
Well, I just also want to say welcome. We're so glad all of you are here. And if you didn't bring a dish, do not worry. As Debbie said, there is lots of good food there. We want all of you to come over and enjoy it with us. One of the things that Alcovy does is we do things through different organizations. And in October, we are joining with Covington First Methodist Church in Change the World Day. We're collecting blankets. Now, that's pretty much full of new blankets, but they do not have to be new blankets. You can bring a clean, used blanket. If your closet is overflowing with blankets and you want to wash them up and bring them, they are delighted to take them, and you'll be doing somebody a good deed. The back of your bulletin has lots of events coming up. We will be having choir practice this afternoon at 3 o'clock. Do not run away. And of course, we have our homecoming this morning, and Reverend Dr. Quincy Brown, I want to apologize. I could not get Reverend and Doctor on the sign, so he is Reverend Dr. Quincy Brown. And we're going to have you here. Next Saturday is the Fall Festival at Jersey United Methodist Church in their parking lot from 10 to 3. We hope you'll go out and participate in that. And on Sunday the 30th, it's our All Sing Sunday. So come prepared with some of your favorite songs to tell Leanne that we want to sing. We'll just get them in her hands and we'll all enjoy them. We're doing Change the World on October the 20th, and it's also that day is the Damascus Fun Run. We did have a little bit of a scheduling conflict, but that road race will take place here, so if you're driving into town on Saturday morning, be careful and watch out for the runners. That's in October. We want you to be prepared for a couple of things coming up. Our Laity Sunday is on the 21st, and Church Conference will be that afternoon at Red Oak, and the 27th is Wesley Walk. If anybody would like to walk, you do need to register. I have the information right here. I'll be glad to share that with you. It's $20 to register, and you do get a t-shirt with that. The funds that we raise are going directly to Action Ministries. So if you are approached by someone, be generous. We appreciate it. And then on the 28th of October, we will be having our Fall Festival. Lots of things going on, and what I like to tell you is please take your bulletin home. Not only will you keep up with the events, but inside is our prayer list, and we want you to join us in prayer. Are there other announcements? If not, at this time, we're going to ask Lil if she will give us the prayer requests and celebrations that we've had.
Is it too much to say welcome a third time? No, I can't help myself. I've got to. We've got a lot of visitors that come a long way, and I'm so glad to have Chris and his family. Did your family didn't come, did they?
No, they didn't make.
Just you. All right.
But you need to tell them how far he came.
He come all the way from Fredericksburg, Virginia. Why? Because I asked him. And so did you. Danny, you came because we asked you to. We asked you all to come, and we're so happy you're here. Now let's get to our prayer requests. I have only 2 right now on my list. Teresa Davis and Andrew Hall. Are there any more?
My brother David is already on there, but he did get a diagnosis of cancer and will have to undergo radiation and chemotherapy. So keep him and all of us in your prayers as we help transport him back.
Are there any others?
I got one. Dan Rivers. He had back surgery, did fine, and then he got an infection from it. So.
this is a celebration, but looks like I will not have to have brain surgery after all. The CAT scan indicated that my body is kind of healing itself, and so we will have another CAT scan in 6 weeks and see where we go from there.
Prayers answered.
And I have a celebration too. Fred we got the shots, finally, Friday morning. We had a little difficulty knowing where to give them to him at, but, we got an angel that come and give them to him. So, it hasn't quite kicked in yet. I guess I was expecting an overnight miracle, but it hasn't quite kicked in yet, but at least it's a start. Took 4 shots, 15 days, we did 2 more, the rest of his life.
Any more?
I'm fighting some back trouble right now. I don't know what's happening, but we hit a deer this week, so I don't know if that affected it or what. I'm in a rental right now.
Any others? Any celebrations? How about birthdays, anniversaries?
No birthday, but Scott and my sister Carol had a wonderful time at Niagara Falls this week. And I just have to share with y'all what Scott said. And if you do not know Scott, there's some of you may not, Scott is deaf, so language and interpretation sometimes are different from ours. But as he saw the mist in the middle of the lake, he said, that's God taking the water back to heaven. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, there was a celebration I didn't see on the calendar. David and Debbie are celebrating their anniversary on Tuesday.
Oh, yeah.
I do it.
Well, David didn't say he was celebrating, he just said he was having an anniversary.
Lil had down that me and Fred was having one, but we're really not.
Okay. That's it. Now put on another hat.
This is the day on page 657 in your Methodist hymnals. Sometimes, God, we need a little push. So we ask that during this week, as we think back on today and the joy we've had, the songs we've sung, the sermons we've heard, we remember that, and may that be the push that we need as we go and turn others from their ways into the ways that they need to be, into your ways. We ask all of these things, Father, in your holy name, and as we enjoy this day, let us not forget all the suffering that's going on in the world. And let us remember those who have illnesses and needs that we need to pray for. There are others that are enjoying life, and may they be blessed also. And we just thank you so much for everything you've given us and freedom to come into church this morning and to worship you. We ask these things in your name, and we ask, Father, that you hear the prayer that you taught us to pray. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Our next hymn is 545. You may remain seated. We will be singing verses 1, 2, and 5.
Amen.
And now, if you will, please stand for our affirmation of faith, which will be followed by the glory offering. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is one true church, apostolic and universal, whose holy faith let us now declare.
We believe in God the Father, infinite in wisdom, power, and love, whose mercy is over all his works, and whose will is ever directed to his children's good. We believe in Jesus Christ, Son of God and Son of Man, the gift of the Father's unfailing grace, the ground of our hope, and the promise of our deliverance from sin and death. We believe in the Holy Spirit as the divine presence in our lives, whereby we are kept in perpetual remembrance of the truth of Christ and find strength and help in time of need. We believe that this faith should manifest itself in the service of love as set forth in the example of our blessed Lord, to the end that the kingdom of God may come upon the earth. Amen. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Ghost, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Amen.
You may be seated.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, it is times like these that we are so honored and loved to be your children. We thank you for this time and this pause in our worship service to return back to you. Bless these tithes and offering in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
We're not early. I said, so we can get there early. We had every traffic light. Of course you did. Of course you did. Always Barbara. Yes, we don't know who he is.
Mr. Giles.
It is great to have this place that I can watch all of you see each other. You're welcome to come up here and just watch. It's a great event. I want to tell you who this guy is, but I want to start to where he comes from. And he's over here going, what is she going to say? But y'all that come every week, you're used to it, that you don't know where it's going. But you know, when you pray for the United Methodist Church, which I'm confident that you are all doing that, because that's our administrative body. I'm not going to try to describe it, but that's the whole world. And then we have the North Georgia Conference, which is the northern half of Georgia, and that's where we are. And in that are districts, little spots, and they're churches that are grouped. My friend here is the district superintendent of one of those districts. Now, I can remember when I used to go to church and they used to say, oh, they're ADOCs, and they would use all this. The name of our district is the Atlanta, Decatur, Oxford. You can kind of tell where it goes. It goes into Decatur all the way out. Quincy has a huge district, and these churches are under his supervision. So I guess you might say that he's my boss, but I guess I don't like that word or that thought. I consider him a friend. But he is the person that I turn to. But I tell him, I'm so sorry, because I know you have to work harder with the new pastors, because I'm asking you the dumbest questions. But he never says, oh, I don't want to look at his face. But anyway, this is Reverend Dr. Quincy Brown, and he is our district superintendent of ADOCs in Atlanta, Decatur, Oxford. And you don't have to know all that, but what you need to know is we are very organized, professional group. And so when you hear that we have certain rules and policies that we follow, we're very serious about that. We don't do willy-nilly in this church. We very much follow protocol, and we follow God's direction on top of it all. So, for you, my friend.
Thank you. I had no idea what she was going to say. Thank you, Debbie. It is a great pleasure to stand here. I've been here before on a church conference, and I've met some of you, and it's good to see old faces and then new names and new faces. So thank you, particularly for those of you that have traveled a long way to get here. And so we thank you for that. That says a lot, that you were willing to put the miles on your car to get here. And so that means that this church has been doing some great things, as evidence in your being here today. So I thank you. Also want to thank your musicians for playing, and I thank the choir. Where are you, choir? You're kind of scattered around, but you kind of left me. But thank you for singing, and the ushers, and most importantly, thank all of you. There are a lot of places you can be on Sunday morning, but you chose to be here at this particular day at this particular time. I understand that this is a special day for you because it's homecoming. Dion, my wife, and I, Dion, wave your hand so we can reach. This is a special day for us too, because this is our anniversary. This is our anniversary day. And so while we rejoice with you and your homecoming, we also rejoice about our beautiful, wonderful years of marriage together, and the best is yet to come. So this morning, the Bible lesson comes from Mark chapter 30, and that's found on page 1229 in your Pew edition of the Bible. And I'm going to read from my electronic device, so if you have an iPhone or an iPad, or if you have the Pew Bible in front of you, I'd ask that you would read along with me. Hear the reading. From there, Jesus and his followers went through Galilee, but he didn't want anyone to know it. This was because he was teaching his disciples, the human one, or in some of your translations it may say the Son of Man, will be delivered into human hands. They will kill him. 3 days after he is killed, he will rise again. But they didn't understand this kind of talk, and they were afraid to ask him. They entered Capernaum. When they had come into the house, he asked them, "What were you arguing about on the journey?" They didn't respond, since on the way they had been debating with each other about who was the greatest. He sat down, called the 12, and said to them, "Whoever wants to be first must be least of all and servant of all." Jesus reached for a little child, placed him amongst the 12, and embraced him. Then he said, "Whoever welcomes one of these children in my name welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me isn't actually welcoming me, but rather welcoming the one who sent me." This is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
My mother was 4'11", as tall as she stood. When Mama drove, she had to have a couple of pillows in the driver's seat. For 2 reasons. 1, to see over the steering wheel. 2, so that oncomers would know that this is not a car driving itself. You laugh, this is the truth. Now, to make matters interesting, when I was a child, Mama's car was a 4-door 1975 Caprice Classic. Big car. It had the bench vinyl seats. And when I was 13 years old, at that time it was junior high, we didn't have a middle school. And our school was such that it only had 2 buildings. And the building that had the upper floor, well, the upper floor was the junior high. And so I knew nothing about middle school. I went to 2 schools in my entire life, elementary school and then high school, upstairs for the junior high and then downstairs for high school. You know that experience. You may have went to my high school. When I was 13 years old, I had a dentist appointment and Mama had to come get me from school. Typically, I would have the dentist appointments early in the morning so that I'd get to school late. But this time, for some reason, it was in the afternoon. My brother, who's 3 years younger than I am, was with my mama in the 1975 brown, I call it the brown bomber. That big Chevrolet Caprice, when you got to 65 miles per hour, it would literally float. And that's what I loved about it. Well, Mama came to pick us up, but it was almost time for school to be out. And so the buses had lined themselves accordingly, waiting for those of us to run out and to jump on the bus. Mama tried to squeeze by one of the buses. Well, Mama, as tall as she was, on the 2 pillows, didn't see that there was a utility pole on the right side of the bus. And so on the left side, she had plenty good room. On the right side, not so much. And so, as she was driving as slowly as she could, she hit the side of the utility pole on the passenger side at the rear door. The collision with the pole bumped her over a little bit, and then she put on her brakes, and my brother tells me this story afterwards, And you can imagine him telling me this story as if it were a SpongeBob episode. He had all kind of excitement in his voice. So when I got to the car, by the way, my brother had always gotten to ride in the front seat. I got to get in the back seat. The side where the metal side panel had been injured or damaged. And it stuck out just a little bit so that there was a pointy end, and you had to be careful when you opened the back door. It would open just fine, but you had to make sure when you swung the door open that your legs were not in the right place or the wrong place at the right time. Over the summertime, my cousin, Brian, would come to spend the weekend with us. And on Friday, for whatever reason, Mama had this strange ritual. She declared the kitchen to be closed. And so if we were going to eat, we had to go to McDonald's. Of course, we couldn't drive, and so there we were in the back seat of the brown bomber, floating down Main Street to get us a Happy Meal. Well, whatever reason, Mama wasn't driving this weekend, and Daddy drove us. Now, my daddy had a lead foot. Not literally a lead foot, but he would punch it every time we get in the car. And I don't know if it was about time and he had to be early, but he would always obey the traffic laws. But sitting in the brown bomber at the time, which didn't have back seat belts, you were afraid for your life. Because the zip would float, and if he would stop very hard because of his lead foot on the pedal, and you would jerk. And so there were times where, we had to duck and roll, otherwise we'd be in the front seat. Brian was with us, and Daddy decided he didn't want to go to McDonald's because he didn't believe that they were real hamburgers. Don't know why. He decided that he wanted to go to Burger King. And so we went to Burger King. And so in the restaurant, my brother on the way got the front seat. And in the restaurant, we were arguing about who was going to ride the front seat. Now, we didn't know what the game was called. Probably you knew it, and I just didn't. But what we were really doing is we were calling out shotgun. Who's going to ride shotgun? Now, in my neighborhood, you didn't talk about shotguns because they really were shotguns, and people shot them in the air, and sometimes if you trespassed. And so we were arguing about this, and so we decided the way to settle this was to see who could get to the car the fastest. Well, I knew I could outrun my brother. He's 3 years younger than I am. My cousin Ron, not so much. He's about 8 months older than I am, and he was bigger than I was. And I had always wanted to sit in the front seat of the car. Let me tell you why. You see, I thought it was my birthright. I was the oldest in the family. I should have been the one in the front seat who had control of the radio. If you're in the front seat, you can control what radio station you listen to. And during those times, there was no such thing as cassette decks unless you bought something extra. And so it was factory made, AM, FM, you pushed the little slots to save it, and you had a dial. And sometimes, when your favorite station would come on, you had the antenna. Sometimes you had to go wrap a little piece of aluminum foil on the top of that antenna and hold your tongue a certain way so that the FM station would play. I wanted first dibs on that. See, I wanted front seat ability. Also, you got to control the air conditioning. There was a switch there, and then there was just, in those days, they were blue and red, and you slid them over, and they make sounds like, And if you were in the back seat, if it was hot and you were really, really hot and you wanted to be cool and you put it on full blast, well, in the back seat, it was tough. Because whatever the person in the front seat wanted is what was in the car. Also, I had the luxury of being able to wind the window all the way down. Because in the back seat of the car, the window only went 3/4 of the way down. And so I wanted to be in the front seat. So I made up in my mind that I'm gonna run as fast as I can to the brown bomb. And so I did. But I'd forgotten that Mama had hit the utility pole. And the metal panel on the rear end of the right passenger side back door was protruding out. And I got to the car in record time, and I won the bet. But that piece of metal lodged into my thigh. Ouch indeed. My daddy was oblivious. I'm in shock, because I'm thinking I'm gonna die because of the pain. It was summertime, we were in shorts, and I didn't know what to do. So I gave up the privilege of front seat. And once again, my younger brother got to sit in the front seat, and I'm riding home with my hand pressed over my leg. And there's all kind of yucky blood that's dripping on the vinyl seats. But I didn't say anything because Daddy would yell at me and I'd get in trouble. In our Bible lesson, the disciples are walking alongside Jesus. And they get back home to Galilee, and particularly they get back to the city of Capernaum. And they go into the house, probably Peter's house, because that's where the headquarters were, and that's where they stayed. And Jesus was talking about what was going to happen to him. And like me, I was so busy thinking, they were so busy talking about front seat privileges themselves. Now, first century Palestine didn't have cars. And so their front seat privilege was, well, when the kingdom comes and everything settles down, who's gonna be number one? Who's gonna get front seat privilege? Who's gonna get to sit shotgun with Jesus and God? And that's what they were arguing about. So when they get back to the house, Jesus asked them the question, what were you arguing about on the road? And it was as silent then as it is now. They didn't say anything because they knew that he knew. And Jesus says, guys, if you really want front seat privileges, if you really want to ride shotgun, if you really want to be first, then you need to be the servant, the least. And then he picked up a child and he placed it in his lap. And he says, you got to come like this child if you want to be great. For those who accept this child accepts me, and you don't accept me, you accept the one who sent me. Now, on first glance, it seems like Jesus is giving us a great children's sermon and a great children's moment about loving children. But I'm not so sure that's what he had in mind. You see, in first century Palestine, where Jesus grew up, there were pecking orders of social status. And unfortunately, children, they were at the bottom. They had no status. None. They were to be seen and not heard. In fact, the livestock had higher status than the children did, because you see, the livestock could actually work. Children could not. And so when Jesus places the child, incidentally the word child and the word servant in his time sounded similar. When he put the child in the lap, it blew their minds. And so this morning I ask you, do you want front seat privileges? You know, my mother-in-law, I love her to death, but my mother-in-law will not ride in the front seat. Mommy would always ride in the back seat. Until this last time she came to visit, she'd come visit with us about several days at a time. And the last time that she visited with us, she needed me to take her on some errands, and of course I obliged her. And so we went to Kroger. And in the garage, I'm used to going to the back door and opening it up for Mommy. And she stops at the front door. And I said, oh my. And she gets in the front door. And she sits in the front seat. And I said, Mommy, are you okay? She said, I'm okay, son. I trust you. Well, I'll be. Here's a person that for as long as I've known her has sat in the back seat. But on this one time, she sits in the front seat. She overcomes her fears, I guess. And what she tells me is, I trust you. You know, this whole thing about I trust you is pretty big with Jesus. Because Jesus tells people, follow me. Will you trust me? And if you're like me, you think you have the birthright to the front seat. You think you're born with front seat privileges in that you get what you want and you're in power. Most people who are passengers in cars, they're riding with, particularly if they're riding with somebody they know, if the speed gets a little more than you're comfortable with, and you see the headlights of a car in front of you, your first inclination is to push very hard on the floor panel as if you have brakes yourself. Is it just me? And you get uncomfortable because you're out of control, because you've got front seat privileges, but you don't have the wheel. And it's not that you don't trust the person driving, you just don't know them that well to trust them. And do you see those red lights? Stop, stop, stop. See, in the front seat, we want to be in control, like the disciples. And Jesus says, no, back seat is where it is. Because when you're in the back seat, you're at the mercy of the driver. What about you? Is there a place in your life where you need to get out of the front seat and hop into the back seat? If there isn't, then just keep living. Because what will happen is your life, the metaphorical car in your life, will spin out of control. Because control is an illusion. It will be a crisis that you can't handle. Maybe it's your health. Maybe your body will decide, you know what? I don't want to do what you want to do today. Or maybe it will be your spouse. Or maybe it will be your grandkid. Or maybe it will be your child. Or maybe it will be the boss on your job that says, it's time for you to make a change. And you hadn't anticipated making a change because you like where you are. Being in the front seat, we assume that it's about control. But if we're following Jesus, he asks us to ride in the back seat. And like my mother-in-law, who's been in the backseat all her life, that one time she got into the front seat. Not because she wanted the privileges like I did. She got in the front seat because she trusts me. Do you trust Jesus enough to ride in the back seat? Those who have ears, let them hear.
Amen.
I want to invite the musician to come forward as we sing our ending hymn, the servant song. I believe that is in a handout in your program. If you will stand if you're able, and we will sing together. How many verses? All of them?
Yes.
We'll do all verses. Okay. Takes out the light into the world, I ask that you remain standing for the blessing of the food and the hands that prepared it and our benediction. Let's pray. Lord God, we give you thanks for all that we've heard, all we've experienced, and all we've seen. Now, oh God, we ask that you bless this food, bless the hands that prepared it. May it strengthen our body that we may be stronger people to make this world a better place. My prayer for you, Alcovy Church, as you leave this place and either transition back to your home or go back down to the fellowship hall to have some good food, is that God will go in front of you to lead you. May God be behind you to keep you from straying. May God hover above you to protect you and drop underneath you to support you. But most importantly, my prayer is that God will walk beside you because of the promise never to leave you. Amen.
Amen.